This Saturday at 3 o'clock, Leicester City play Aston Villa at home at the King Power Stadium. I've invited For the Love of Paul McGrath Villa podcast onto the channel to discuss this weekend's game, hear a little bit about Villa, and again, like last week, what an opposition fan thinks of Leicester City this season.
Here we go. The end of the line. You can't go your way, and I'll go mine. Here it goes. The end of the line. You can't run away. Our whole world smiles with you.
Hello and welcome back to Blue Tinted Glasses. Today, as you saw in the intro, I've got Neil from the For the Love of Paul McGrath Villa podcast. Neil, thanks for coming on, mate. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, my pleasure. Well, let's get started. Obviously, it's Leicester City versus Aston Villa this weekend. I want to start with Villa, of course. I want to basically get your thoughts and your insight on what your expectations are for Aston Villa this season. Obviously, last season you had a great year, a proper season, really good season, Champions League football, for you guys this year. What has anything changed going into this season? Have the expectations eased? What's going on?
Yeah, so how will I put this? Sometimes the right manager comes in and takes over the right team. And I'm sure you guys are well aware of that, obviously, within the league previously. And while Villa aren't at that level yet, obviously, Villa's manager, obviously, Unai Emery, has come in here and completely transformed this team in jig time. In a time that I think even the most ardent and positive Villa fan, of which I like to categorize myself as, would have even believed. Like, there's no way I would have believed that he would have been able to turn us around from 17th position in the league into Champions League, and at one stage almost leading at Christmas time. It was last year was just fairy tale stuff at times. So I think what's happened is I think that in this off season, a lot of people expected huge names to be coming through the door at Aston Villa, and we've signed some really good players. We've signed Ian Maatsen, Andrea Onana, and quite a few more. And I think sometimes that I think that that's kind of bearing on what kind of people's view, our Villa fans' view on Aston Villa is at the moment. Maybe they haven't got the big name that really would have pushed them over the line. Now, my way of thinking here is that Unai Emery is a manager. He's not somebody who just gets a conglomeration of players together and finds a way for them to win. He gets specific players in. He did it at Villarreal. He did it at Sevilla. He makes players as opposed to players making him. And I think that why I'm mentioning all this and why I'm going through this is that expectation at Villa Park is high amongst the fans. Yeah. It's high. Villa fans don't expect us to go through the Champions League and get knocked out in the first however I would say knockout stage, essentially, or the first stage, the first group stage, with all the new changes that are happening at the moment. But also, Villa fans expect us to qualify for Champions League again next year. And as I said, while I would be the most ardent and optimistic fan, I think that is quite possible. But I also have steeled myself for the fact that Villa may not be able to fight on two fronts again this season. Last year was an absolute unicorn year in a lot of ways. Ollie Watkins was shooting the lights out. While we were conceding goals at the back, we were so fluid in movement in midfield, and we've continued that onto this year. So there's an awful lot for Villa fans to be very, very proud of, an awful lot to be very excited about. And I think the expectation is warranted, because, hey, as I say, you might as well enjoy the time that you're on the up and up, because, as you guys know, after being relegated after winning the league, Villa have also been relegated recently as well. So you got to enjoy the good times as much as you possibly can. And that's where the expectation is, I think, for Villa fans. We're right to expect things from the team. And look, if we don't reach those expectations, at least it keeps the burning sense of optimism, I think, that Villa fans should have about their manager and their team for this coming season.
Yeah, I think definitely when a team, like a surprise package team, gets into the top four, I mean, obviously Leicester won the league, obviously Newcastle, and now you guys.
Mhm.
There is usually a drop off, isn't there, the year after, with the Champions League football thrown into the schedule as well. But maybe you guys might surprise, maybe you guys might surprise us, and you do get in the top four again. And I think that's really important in terms of establishing yourself at that level. I think with Leicester, we dropped off after we won the league. Obviously, we finished like 8th and 9th, and then we were back up there, finishing 5th twice. But I think Champions League, we all know the money is the thing. If you can get that money consistently, then that sets you up. But
Mm.
Leicester fell short of top 4 2 years in a row, and we just fell apart because we couldn't compete anymore with the financial side of things. We had like the 7th highest wage bill in the Premier League, and then obviously we get relegated, and here we are with FFP problems and all of that.
And you're dead right, because you have to speculate to accumulate when you get to the Champions League. Because no matter how much you want to do, you want to go to the Champions League with a bunch of guys that got you there. You're going to have to improve, because you go up against Madrid, Vinicius, and Mbappe are going to tear you a new one. It's a case of you want to put your best foot forward in that group. So I can completely understand that. And it's like I remember Christian Purslow saying he said something at an Aston Villa supporters group meeting, and some Villa fans will be looking at this going, what are you bringing up Purslow for? But he said that the time when Villa got promoted, he said, we're in a situation that, yes, we're a big club, but we can't spend outside our means as much as we'd like to. We can't even spend as much as Bournemouth, who've been in the Premier League for 3 seasons now. And that allowed them then to be able to get their foothold in. And it's exactly the same with Champions League. You need to be in the Champions League almost 2-3 seasons on the trot to really see the benefit of that ongoing balance sheet piece that allows you to kick PSR down the road for 3 years and see what happens then after that. And the speculation to accumulation that will happen, the goodwill, like big investments, big sponsorships will want to, they'll say, yeah, you did it last year, but show me what you're going to do this year. Whereas if you do it 3 years in a row, they're kind of going, okay, this team is something about them here. They've shown a bit of consistency, and that's what drives all the big money. And sure, all you got to do is look at Chelsea, look at Man United, teams that haven't really that weren't kicking up any massive storms. I know Chelsea finished in the European places, and Manchester United obviously had a run at getting into 4th last year and fell short. But they're megalomaniacs that they have inside in the boardroom and in the accounting room. They've done their money. They've done their work 10 years previous. Same with Spurs, So, and I'm not telling anybody they don't know anything here, but that's why Unai Emery has said in every single preview, he said, Champions League is great. We get to test ourselves. The league is our bread and butter. We want to finish 4th. We want to finish 3rd. We want to do better in the league. And he's right. He's right. As much now as we want to enjoy the Champions League.
Just before we move on to the game, because we've touched on it briefly there, PSR. I mean, I always like to get the opinion of other fans from other clubs that aren't in the traditional Big Six. What would you make to it? Because I see that you guys have been getting involved in some loopholes, with the transfer side of things, like Douglas Luiz and Illing Jr. and Maatson and Kellyman. Leicester did it as well with Dewsbury Hall and Michael Golding. Loads of clubs are doing it. What's your overall take on PSR and all of that?
My overall take is I'm just annoyed we didn't do more of it. I really am. When the Premier League come out and say there's no rules being broken here, and you can just see a concerted effort by fans of teams, by I won't get into, like, it's not being conspiratorial or anything like that, but when Villa did the deal with Lewis Dobbin and Timur Ogbenham, Villa wanted Lewis Dobbin. They needed a striker. They had somebody that they knew was coming in to replace Irogbenham. They would have loved to keep Irogbenham, but 9 million on the transfer on the balance sheet was worth more to them than the 2.5 million or the 2 million that Lewis Dobbin was going to cost. They wanted to loan Lewis Dobbin out. It was clear as sin. We knew Irogbenham was a good player, and you can see it. He's playing well for Everton at the moment. He's probably been their best player so far this season. But people were up in arms over this, and it was a case of, guys, like what has really happened? What has really gone wrong here? There's nothing has been done that's anywhere even conceivably wrong, other than the fact that people of other clubs hadn't a clue who these two players were. That's literally it. It was ignorance that caused the issue. The exact same thing then with Kellyman. Omari Kennyman, Villa did not want to sell Omari Kennyman, but when you're to the pin your collar towards PSR and someone offers you 20 million for a kid who's played X amount of games, like he was really good for Villa last year. He was Villa's jewel in the crown. They really wanted him to stay and to progress. But 20 million now is worth more than a potential 40 million in 3 years' time when PSR is on your doorstep now. So they've done nothing wrong, regards to it. And once again, just because fans of other clubs or even media entities haven't a clue who these players are, and it all comes back to even coverage of football matches and stuff like that. Even when you watch Sky, that certain people haven't done their homework and they're just spouting out what I think is a vanilla line to keep something to keep the masses happy. And look, that's just the way it was with the PSR stuff as well. Villa stayed within the rules. Leicester stayed within the rules. Chelsea have stayed within some rules. I think there's probably more to be said about that, especially with the but that it's not for me to talk about that because I would just be hypocritical. But what any of the transfer dealings that they've done with Villa and with Leicester, they're completely and utterly above board. Even so much so that, and I'm sorry about my high horse about this, even so much so that when Aston Villa sold Cameron Archer to geez, I'm blanking on who they sold. No, not Sheffield United. When they sold them on again to, God, I can't even remember who they sold him to.
Yeah, I can't think, mate.
I'm completely blanking on it. But when they sold him, there was this big thing about, Villa can't do that. They're supposed to keep a player within 26 weeks. And then you're going, no, you can do that if you have a valid reason for doing it and you're not trying to circumnavigate any laws or taxes or anything like that. So
Southampton.
It just seems to be Southampton, yeah. It just seemed to be a bit of a piling. It just seemed to be a bit of piling on clubs that were doing this for the first time, and everyone was like, "Wait a minute, you're not allowed to do this. You're not allowed to do this. Only our club's allowed to do this." And look, that's the way it became. But anyway, look, it's over and done with now. I think a lot more clubs and a lot more teams will be doing deals like they have been done now. And if they want to change the rules, they can change the rules at the next Premier League meeting. And look, lock the door afterwards. I don't care, but no rules were broken by Leicester or by Aston Villa in any of their dealings with Chelsea. So,
yeah, I hear you, mate. I hear you. I mean, it looks like Leicester might have breached anyway, which is just Leicester for you. I mean, we can't.
But I think you guys breached PSR from a couple years previous, wasn't it? Was that?
Yeah,
what
the
that
year
was
we got
about?
relegated, but we might have done it again. We don't know yet. We sold Dewsbury Hall before the 30th of June to try and comply with the EFL.
Yeah.
And it looks like we might have breached, but we'll find out later on. We're getting a points deduction this season anyway, no matter what. So for the relegation year, so we just got to wait and see. All right, then on to the game. Obviously, Villa. It's both our club's third game this season, third Premier League game. So I know that you guys obviously won your first game against West Ham, and then you lost 2-0 to Arsenal. How have you played in them two games? I saw the Arsenal game, but how do you feel you've played so far this season?
I'll be honest. I think we've played really well. I think we've carried over an awful lot of form from last season, specifically in our build-up play into this season. I think, obviously with a Unai Emery team or with this team last season, we rode our luck. But a lot of times, I think in the first two games of this season, I think we were unlucky against Arsenal in a lot of ways. Obviously, Ollie Watkins has only played 60 minutes football since the Euros. That's probably been the biggest piece that Villa have. If they could have had their time back again, he got an inopportune injury, couldn't play the game against Dortmund. It was only a little niggle, but couldn't play the game against Dortmund. Couldn't play two behind closed doors sessions that they had. Games that they had prior to the build up to West Ham, and then played against West Ham. And then against Arsenal, those two. The first one, anyway, I will go to my grave saying the first one was a lot worse missed than the David Raya save. Even though you go on Twitter, people think people are entitled to their views, But that's a stunning save for me. And if you go try and pinpoint in stuff there, you're going to put it wide, especially with a diving header. But yeah, I think overall, I think the quality of play has been brilliant. I've been a big believer since he signed for Aston Villa in January of last year. I've always thought that Morgan Rogers was Villa of caught lightning in a bottle here. Nothing really jumped off the page other than his size, his strength, and this is something Villa have done really well when they've signed players. They've signed good footballers that have this tangible kind of strength, height, weight kind of ratio. And big, tall guys that are athletic, they can kick a football. They can kick a football really well. And Morgan Rogers was one of those. And like his game against Arsenal has made a lot of people stand up. But towards the end of last season, Villa just kind of flopped over the line, I suppose, towards the end of the season. We were missing Morgan Rogers for a couple of those games, and that power that he brings in driving that ball forward, being able to shrug players off. He's getting more and more confident now. I can see a really, really good season for him, and without being hyperbolic, I can see a call up under maybe even Lee Carsley. If Carsley wants to shake things up in one of the coming internationals, but real big standout player for us, along with some of the signings we brought in, Onana and so on. We're drip feeding in the likes of Matson into the team, and Ross Barkley obviously came in as well to offer a small bit of experience. So overall, I think Villa fans would have to be happy. We'd be a lot happier with 6 points, but I think you'd have to be happy with the 2 performances that we've had at the start of the season.
So obviously, coming up, I mean, I won't ask you yet on Leicester, but I mean, from a Leicester kind of point of view, for me, you know, we've had a tricky start to the season. Obviously, Tottenham, Fulham, and now Villa. So it's a tough start. Obviously, I don't know if you saw. I'm guessing you probably did because it was Monday Night Football. But the first game, Leicester Tottenham. You know, we were just under the cosh for pretty much the whole game, to be honest with you. But I think the second half, you'll probably agree that, you know, Leicester took their chance, you know, with brief counter attacks and obviously just trying to get out of our own half. Fulham was very much the same as the Tottenham first half. We really struggled. I think we're giving teams a lot of basically we're giving them a lot of credit, and we're not really going at them enough, in my opinion. But I think you need to bear in mind that we are obviously a newly promoted team. We don't have the quality of Fulham. So the Villa game, I'm really unsure. I mean, last night we played Tranmere in the cup. We won 4-0, but there was a change tactically from Steve Cooper. The formation was slightly different. So it'd be interesting to see if he does make any changes, you know, going into the Villa game from the Fulham game. From what you have seen of Leicester, what are you thinking? Do you think it's going to be a big struggle for us this year?
With points deductions, I think it could be. I think the Premier League has gotten really strong this year. I think Premier League is much stronger this year than it was last year, just based on the signings that some teams have made. Now, once again, I would have said that Burnley wouldn't have got relegated last year, and sure, they couldn't kick a ball for the first 6 months of the year, you know, and they only came into and you know, so like I think Leicester have done some good business in the transfer market. My favorite thing to do is be an amateur scout of players. You know, I've got 2 small kids. I'm up in the middle of the night, and if I'm trying to put them down, first thing I'll do is I'll try and Y Scout or something like that, and I'd start looking at stuff. And anyway, long the short of it is, like, Villa or Leicester have brought in some good players, like Abdul Fattah. Is a fine player, just a really, really, really good player. As is, I think Caleb Okole is a really good player. I saw him play for Italy against Ireland in, I don't know, was it under 18s or under 19s? The man is a mountain. You know, he was just he was a fully grown man playing then, and he was outstanding. So really, really like that signing as well. Buonanotte as well, I think is a good player. I think he's a really good player. On loan from Brighton, he's active. He's going to bring that kind of that kind of how would I put it? That terrier kind of blue bottle energy that Vardy has brought up until maybe a couple of years ago up there. So I think that's a really, really good signing as well. And you know, I'm not particularly a huge Ollie Skip fan, but I can see why people like him. I don't think he's a bad player or anything like that. I just never thought that he would fit in with Aston Villa. But you know, he's obviously come over from Spurs, so he's going to relish the chance to find a new home for himself and to play, coming out sometimes from under the shadow of being a Spurs boy and being there in the team. And obviously with the turnover of players that they have, and young players never really get a look in for long enough to make themselves legends outside of Harry Kane and maybe one or two others. I suppose you could put Harry Winks in the same bracket as Ollie Skip there as well. I think they're smart signings. I think they're very smart signings. And I also like Steve Cooper.
Do you?
I'm probably
Okay.
I'm probably one of the bigger Steve Cooper fans from a coaching point of view. That you might find. Now, is he going to get everything perfect? And is he going to be, Pep Guardiola? No, he's not. But put it this way, if I think he's a real good, honest, and he's I find it difficult to dislike him. He's able to reinvent himself and reinvent his team. He may not like. I could see why he got the boot against Forest. I thought it was a small bit harsh, or for Forest, a small bit harsh. But he knows the game of football. And I think that has to be appreciated an awful lot. He's not going to come in. He's going to make players better if he's given enough time.
Yeah, I find still at this stage. I mean, it's even been 2 weeks since the season started, but even now, I look at our starting 11, for example, and I don't know what to make of it. Like when I go player by player, I don't know whether it is a good team or if it isn't, because some of these players 3 years ago were competing for Champions League. It's crazy. Wilfred Ndidi, James Justin, like, Ricardo Pereira, Jamie Vardy. I look at the team, I'm like, these guys were like in Europe, and now when I look at the team, I'm like, oh, I don't know if this team's good enough to stay up. And it's just such a weird thing. I don't know if it's just the relegation season that is kind of filling me with like, oh yeah, these players maybe aren't good enough. But I mean, we were coached by Brendan Rodgers there. Obviously, that went well to start with, didn't it? But it ended in tears. So I expect Villa to have most of the ball on Saturday. How do you normally fare up against a team that kind of let you have the ball and kind of just lay off you a bit?
So this is a $6 million question with Aston Villa since Unai Emery has come in. We can be hit and miss sometimes. Last year against Sheffield United, we couldn't get going against Sheffield United. A big low block. They caught us on the counter. Cameron Archer, who we mentioned previously, scored against Villa. Now Villa did come back and score, and we equalised 1-1. But that was an exceedingly frustrating game against Burnley. Again, I think it was against Burnley last year as well. In the second game, it was just frustrating because teams. The later on we got in the season, as Villa began to tire out, I suppose. Really, we found it very difficult to break those lines. Also, injuries started to hit us in midfield, which was not ideal. Losing Boubacar Kamara in midfield, and losing one or two other guys that we could bring off the bench. Like there was times last year where we were bringing Finlay Monroe, who's gone on loan to a second division team in Spain at the moment. We were bringing him off the bench. That's no disregard to him. He's Declan Rice's cousin. I'm sure there's great pedigree there and everything. He's been tearing it up for our youth team, but the depth wasn't there for Villa to be able to enact massive change, from games like that. Now, this year, I think having the likes of Emi Buendia back, having the likes of Ross Barkley there, having the likes of Jaden Philogene who's come in as well, gives us an option to take off the likes of Bailey and give fresh legs. Whether we'll still be able to break down the low block teams, we haven't seen yet. So that's going to be really interesting if Leicester go and park 10 behind the ball and leave Jamie Vardy up front, or Jordan Ayew up front, who just. Those two players just can't stop scoring goals against Villa as well. By the way, they're Jordan Ayew obviously played with Villa, but they're just nuisances. Whenever they're on the team sheet, you go, okay, well then that's 1 down anyway. If Vardy's playing, it's 2 down now if Jordan Ayew's playing. But anyway, long the short of it, if Leicester go that way, it's going to be interesting to see how we play because we'd like to think we've gotten better at set pieces this year, even though we were really good at it last year. And the extra kind of heft that Onana brings, the fact he can step into a more advanced role as well while leaving Yuri and having Yuri Tillman starting all the time now. There's kind of a juxtaposition there. We hated losing Douglas Luiz for what he brought because he's a magician. But I think maybe the balance of having the two Belgian guys back there and being able to get Tielemans into the team, who was better at playing balls from further away, like slide rule passes and balls around the corner. Luis was way better at getting involved and play around the box. Tielemans was way better at starting things quicker from back. So that juxtaposition between those two players, interesting to see how it works at the weekend. I can't answer your question is the answer to it, but I think if by what you're saying is true, then we'll find out, I suppose, come 5 p.m. on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, I completely forgot about Yuri Tielemans. Obviously, we had James Maddison returning in the first game. We had Timothy Castagna last weekend against Fulham. Now we've got Tielemans. So you expect him to start the game, yeah, Yuri?
I could nearly name Aston Villa's team for you right now, because that's one of the beauties about Emery. Some people see it as a negative from him as well, but like Emery Martinez is going to be in goals. Right back is an area of discussion. There's talks about bringing in a right back. I don't think he'll play, but Kostan Nedeljkovic, young 18-year-old Serbian, absolute hulk of a man, will probably be at right back with Konza and Pau Torres. Left back, I'd imagine he's going to start with Digne again, and Maatsen might be someone he might brings in after the international break. Midfield, we'll see Tielemans and Onana, with McGinn pushed further forward.
Okay.
You'll have Morgan Rogers and Bailey either side of McGinn, and Watkins up top. He doesn't tend to stray too much further from there. Now, I did put it out there as kind of like a 4-2-3-1. That's what it looks like on paper. It's never a 4-2-3-1. Rogers will probably go more top and pull out to the left. And it'll probably McGinn will pull out to the left also as well, and create a kind of a box style midfield as well. So it's really the way that Emery sets the team up. It stops teams from transitioning really quickly. It protects our high line, although we didn't play a high line against Arsenal. I thought for good portions of the game we looked a lot more in control. And that's something I'm going to be willing. I really want to see this year, is the whole not having 11 men sucked too far forward to compensate for a patient build-up play that sometimes we have.
I'd be interested to see what reception Yuri gets. I mean, James Maddison's was mixed. Yuri obviously ran down his contract, but he had many good memories. Obviously, the FA Cup winning goal, of course. So I'm sure there'll be a section of the fan base that do boo, as we do with a lot of former players. But I'm sure he'll get a decent reception from a lot of other people. To end it, Neil, score prediction, mate. If you had to give me one for Saturday,
2-1, Aston Villa.
2-1.
That's how we can see goals. I can see Ollie Watkins after those two misses. Ollie Watkins is kind of a guy that gets down. He kind of, I'm not going to say beats himself up, but he kind of gets, the only time you'll ever kind of see him a bit pissed off is if he's had a game where by maybe he should have scored. And there was a lot of highlights on those two misses. I'm expecting him to come good at the weekend. I'm expecting Morgan Rogers to build on that, because Morgan Rogers is another guy. They started calling him the Hale Zone Messi around Birmingham now. I don't know how. I never could have imagined Messi at 6'2", but here we are. But he's flying in at the moment. His confidence is so high, and I think there's a lot in that front three that has been built on in the last two games that they couldn't build on in pre-season. So I'm hoping that they come good, and if they do, I think they can score 2 goals away from home.
I never know where to go with my head or my heart, but I'll go with my heart, and I'll say 1-1. I don't think we're going to get our first win of the season. Well, 1-1 would be a great result, and I think if we, that would be 2 points from the first 3 games. I think Leicester fans would have taken that, to be fair, at the start, and then we've got Everton and Palace coming up, so there's a couple easier games for us. So, all right, Neil. Well, thanks so much for jumping on. Where could people find you, and will you have any content this weekend to do with Leicester?
Yeah, so what we normally do is we do like an hour and 10 minutes before, actually it's an hour and 20 minutes now before kickoff. We do a live team sheet reaction called the Team Sheet Tantrum. It's a bit of crack. We usually get a lot of fans from other teams in there. I have a very outspoken co-host as well. So he
good.
So it's a bit of crack. We react to the team sheets in real time. It's a bastion of positivity for any Aston Villa fan that's out there. And we get a lot of opposing fans pop in. So yeah, with the transfer window coming out ending this week, I expect Villa to at least have one more ace up their sleeve somewhere along the line. Enzo Barnechea looks like he's gone out on loan today. Samuel Linning Jr. went out on loan yesterday. It seems like they're freeing up space to bring in a player or maybe 2 players to help. I'd be very surprised if a defensive player didn't come in. So obviously, if anything like that happens, we'll go live. But you can find us anywhere you get podcasts, on Spotify and Apple Podcast. Find us on YouTube. The beauty about being the only podcast with Paul McGrath's name in it is all you've got to do is type in Paul McGrath podcast, and we're more than likely going to be the one that shows up. So we're at Love McGrath on Twitter as well, in case anybody wants to follow us there.
Brilliant stuff. Thanks to everyone who has watched this. Remember to hit the subscribe button, hit like, and also head over to the For the Love of Paul McGrath podcast and subscribe to them as well. Thanks again, Neil. Cheers, mate. Good luck after Saturday. Good luck for the rest of the season. All right.
Thanks, William, for having me on.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.